I arrived at my son's for Christmas dinner. My daughter-in-law blocked the door. "No room for you." She set a plastic plate on the floor with scraps. "Eat there like a dog." I laughed. "Oh, honey, dogs are loyal, unlike you." I pulled out my phone and sent my son the photos, her and her boss, working late. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a grandmother learned to bite back. My name is Dorothy Hamilton, and at 67, I thought I'd seen every flavor of family drama. 3 marriages, 2 divorces, 1 widowhood, and a son who married a woman who makes black widow spiders look cuddly. But standing on that front porch at 2847 Maple Street on Christmas Day 2024, holding a pie that took me 4 hours to perfect, I realized I'd been naive about human cruelty. The house looked like something from a magazine. Melissa had insisted on the colonial renovation 2 years ago, all funded by my son Daniel's promotion to regional sales manager at the pharmaceutical company. White columns, red door, wreaths on every window. Martha Stewart would have wept with joy. Too bad the woman inside had the warmth of a meat locker. Dorothy. Melissa stood in the doorway wearing a burgundy dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe style she'd adopted since deciding I was excess baggage. "What are you doing here?" I blinked. "It's Christmas dinner. Daniel invited me last week." That was before we finalized the guest list. She stepped back slightly, but kept her body blocking the entrance. Through the gap, I could see the dining room table set for 8 people. Crystal glasses, gold-rimmed plates, the works. No place setting for me, naturally. "Melissa, I brought apple pie." I held up the dish hopefully. "Daniel's favorite, with the cinnamon crumble you liked last time." Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "How thoughtful, but honestly, we're completely full. The Andersons are here, plus Daniel's work colleagues and their wives. There's simply no room." No room. In a house with 6 bedrooms and a dining room that could seat 12. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I kept my voice pleasant. Years of dealing with difficult customers at the department store had taught me patience. Perhaps I could wait in the kitchen until someone leaves? "Oh, I don't think so." Melissa's voice carried that particular tone people use when explaining things to children or very slow adults. "This is really more of a business dinner anyway. You'd be bored with all the corporate talk." From inside, I heard Daniel's laugh. My son, who used to curl up in my lap during thunderstorms, who called me every day during his divorce from his first wife, who promised he'd never let anyone come between us, that Daniel was 30 feet away, probably telling jokes while his mother stood on the porch like an unwanted door-to-door salesman. Could I at least speak to Daniel? He's in the middle of an important conversation with Mr. Patterson from the home office. Melissa glanced back into the house, then returned her attention to me. "Look, Dorothy, I feel terrible about this. Why don't I make you a plate to take home?" She disappeared for exactly 90 seconds, returning with a paper plate covered in aluminum foil. Through the wrapping, I could see turkey scraps, the dark meat nobody wanted, some dry stuffing, and what looked like the heel of a dinner roll. "There we go." She set the plate on the front porch, right next to the welcome mat that said, "Blessed Family." Then she did something that will live in my memory until my dying day. She pointed to the ground beside the plate. "You can eat right there if you're hungry. Like a good dog." The words hung in the December air like visible frost. For a moment, I couldn't process what I'd heard. Dogs. She'd compared me to a dog. Not just any dog. A good dog. The kind that obeys commands and eats scraps without complaint. I looked at the plate on the concrete porch, then at Melissa's face. She wasn't even trying to hide her satisfaction. This had been planned. The guest list, the seating arrangement, the paper plate, all of it designed to show me exactly where I ranked in her world. And that's when I started laughing. Not bitter laughter or hysterical cackling, just genuine amusement at the sheer audacity of it all. Because dogs, as I pointed out to my charming daughter-in-law, are loyal creatures. They don't sneak around behind their owners' backs. They don't lie about working late. And they certainly don't check into hotel rooms with their married bosses every Tuesday afternoon for the past 6 months. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album I'd been hoping I'd never have to use. "Speaking of dogs, honey," I said, scrolling to the picture I'd taken last Tuesday when I'd followed her car instead of going to my book club meeting. "At least they're loyal. Unlike you." The photo was beautifully clear. Melissa and her boss, Mr. Thompson, entering the Marriott downtown at 2:47 p.m. The second photo showed them checking in at the front desk. The third showed them kissing in the elevator. I held the phone so she could see the screen clearly. Should I send these to Daniel now, or would you prefer to tell him yourself why you're suddenly so interested in working overtime? The color drained from Melissa's face faster than water down a sink. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. For the first time in 3 years, she was completely speechless. I thought you might appreciate knowing that some of us old dogs still have bite, I said pleasantly, then pressed send on the text message I'd already typed to Daniel's number. From inside the house, I heard his phone notification chime, then silence, then the sound of a chair scraping against hardwood floor. What happened next would change everything. Daniel appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later, holding his phone like it contained a live grenade. His face had gone pale under his Christmas tan from the Bahamas vacation Melissa had insisted they take in November. Behind him, I could hear the dinner conversation continuing, the Andersons discussing stock portfolios and Mr. Patterson sharing golf stories. "Mom?" His voice cracked on the word. "What are these pictures?" Melissa tried to grab the phone from his hands, but he stepped back. I watched my son's face as he scrolled through the evidence of his wife's double life. Each swipe brought a new expression: confusion, hurt, rage, and finally, that cold calculation he'd inherited from his father. "Daniel, I can explain," Melissa started, her voice higher than usual. "Explain what exactly?" He looked from the phone to his wife to me, standing on the porch with my apple pie. "Explain why my mother is outside holding a paper plate while you're inside playing hostess? Or explain why you're having an affair with your boss?" The dinner conversation inside had stopped. Complete silence except for the wind chimes on the neighbor's porch. "It's not what it looks like," Melissa said desperately. "Those photos are taken out of context. Your mother has been following me, spying on me. She's trying to ruin our marriage because she's jealous. I had to admire her strategy. When caught red-handed, blame the messenger. It's a classic move, and under different circumstances, it might have worked. But she'd made one critical error. She'd humiliated me in front of witnesses, and now those same witnesses were about to learn exactly who they'd been sharing dinner with. "Jealous?" I repeated, loud enough for the people inside to hear. "Melissa, honey, I'm 67 years old. The only thing I'm jealous of is people who still have their dignity intact." Daniel looked at the paper plate on the porch, then at his wife. "You made my mother eat outside?" "It was just a joke," Melissa said quickly. "A silly Christmas prank. She's being overly dramatic about it." "A prank?" Daniel's voice was deadly quiet. I knew that tone. He'd used it exactly twice in his childhood. Once when his best friend stole his bicycle, and once when his first wife cleaned out their joint bank account. "You made my mother eat on the porch like an animal as a prank." Mr. Patterson appeared behind Daniel, wineglass in hand. "Everything all right out here? We're ready for dessert." "Actually, Tom," Daniel said, never taking his eyes off Melissa, "I think dinner's over." That's when I heard Mrs. Anderson's voice from the dining room. "Is that Daniel's mother outside? Why isn't she joining us?" The moment of truth had arrived. Everyone was about to learn that the perfect Christmas hostess had been serving up humiliation along with the turkey. "Because," I called out cheerfully, stepping past Melissa into the foyer, "apparently there wasn't room for me at the table. But don't worry, Melissa made sure I had somewhere to eat." I held up the paper plate for everyone to see. The collective intake of breath was audible. Mrs. Anderson's wineglass stopped halfway to her lips. Mr. Patterson's jovial expression transformed into something resembling horror. The younger couple I didn't recognize exchanged glances that spoke volumes about what they thought of hosts who treated elderly mothers like stray dogs. "Oh my God," Mrs. Anderson whispered. "Melissa, you didn't actually. It was a misunderstanding," Melissa said. But her voice lacked conviction. She was watching her carefully constructed social image crumble in real time. Daniel held up his phone. "And this? Was this a misunderstanding too?" He turned the screen toward the group. I couldn't see their faces clearly from where I stood, but the silence was deafening. Mr. Patterson set down his wineglass with deliberate care. "I think perhaps Margaret and I should be going." "Me too," said the young woman whose name I'd never learned. "This feels like a private family matter." Within minutes, the dinner party had dissolved. Guests gathered coats and purses with the hurried efficiency of people fleeing a natural disaster. Polite thank yous and see you soons were exchanged, but everyone avoided looking directly at Melissa. When the last guest had departed, Daniel closed the front door and leaned against it. Melissa stood in the middle of her perfectly decorated living room, surrounded by the debris of her ruined Christmas dinner. 15 years, Daniel said quietly. 15 years of marriage, and this is what I get? My mother humiliated on my doorstep while you're having an affair? Daniel, please, Melissa tried again. Let me explain about the photos. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He moved closer to her, his voice gaining strength. Explain to me why you're checking into hotels with your boss. Explain to me why my mother was eating off a paper plate on the porch while you entertained people I work with. I could have spoken up, could have provided more details about what I'd witnessed over the past 6 months. But this wasn't my moment anymore. This was my son, finally seeing his wife for who she really was. The hotels were for work meetings, Melissa said weakly. Confidential client discussions. Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. In hotel rooms? With overnight stays? Mom has photos from 6 different dates. Melissa. 6. Her face went white. She hadn't realized I'd been documenting her activities for months. You want to know the really sad part? Daniel continued. If you'd just asked for a divorce, I probably would have given you half of everything and walked away quietly. But instead, you chose to destroy my relationship with my mother while carrying on an affair. What kind of person does that? Melissa looked around the room as if searching for an escape route. The Christmas tree lights twinkled mockingly in the corner. The expensive decorations she'd insisted on buying seemed to mock her now. Daniel, I love you, she said desperately. We can work through this. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. Just don't let your mother destroy what we have. That's when I decided I'd heard enough. Melissa, I said pleasantly, I didn't destroy anything. You did that all by yourself when you decided to treat family like garbage while playing house with your boss. She whirled to face me, and for a moment, I saw pure hatred in her eyes. This is all your fault. You've been trying to break us up since the day we got married. Have I? I tilted my head thoughtfully, because I seemed to remember offering to help plan your wedding, hosting your bridal shower, and babysitting your sister's kids when you needed time alone together. But apparently, helping family is what crazy old ladies do. Daniel was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Is that what you really think of my mother? The question hung in the air like smoke, and in that moment, watching Melissa scramble for an answer that wouldn't further damn her, I realized something profound. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid of losing my son, because I was about to get him back. The silence stretched until Melissa apparently decided her best defense was a good offense. She straightened her shoulders and faced Daniel with renewed determination. Your mother has been manipulating this family for years, she announced. She pretends to be this sweet grandmother, but she's controlling and possessive. She can't stand that you're married and happy. I almost admired her boldness. Almost. Manipulating how exactly? Daniel asked. The constant phone calls, the surprise visits, the way she questions everything I do. Melissa was gaining momentum now, her voice rising. She undermines my authority in this house at every turn. Your authority? I couldn't help myself. Melissa, this isn't a dictatorship. It's supposed to be a family. See? She pointed at me triumphantly. Right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. She can't let me be the woman of this house. Daniel rubbed his temples like he was developing a headache. The woman of the house? What does that even mean? It means your wife should come first, Melissa snapped. Not your mother. A man is supposed to leave his parents and cleave to his wife. It's biblical. I blinked. In all the years I'd known Melissa, she'd never expressed interest in anything biblical beyond using the church directory for networking purposes. Did you just quote scripture to justify cheating on your husband? I asked. Her face flushed red. I am not cheating. Daniel held up his phone again. Melissa, I have photos of you kissing another man. What exactly would you call that? It was a moment of weakness, she stammered. Tom was going through a divorce and I was trying to comfort him. It didn't mean anything. 6 different hotels didn't mean anything. It was just a few times. And it's over now. Completely over. Daniel walked to the window and stared out at the neighbor's house, where lights twinkled cheerfully on their Christmas tree. A normal family having a normal holiday. The kind of life he'd thought he was building with Melissa. "When did you become someone I don't recognize?" he asked quietly. The question seemed to catch Melissa off guard. For a moment, her mask slipped, and I saw something that might have been regret. "Daniel, I never meant for things to go this far," she said, her voice softer now. "The affair, the way I've treated your mother, none of it was planned. It just happened." "Things don't just happen, Melissa. People make choices." She moved toward him, reaching out tentatively. "I know I've made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, take a vacation, start fresh." "What about my mother?" The question stopped her mid-step. "What about her? Are you going to apologize for humiliating her on Christmas? For making her eat on the porch like an animal?" Melissa's eyes flicked to me, then back to Daniel. I could see her calculating, trying to determine what answer would serve her best. "If that's what it takes," she said finally. "If that's what it takes?" Daniel turned away from the window. "Melissa, you don't apologize to someone because it's expedient. You apologize because you're genuinely sorry for hurting them." "I am sorry," she insisted. "Dorothy, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. The porch thing was inappropriate." I stared at her for a long moment. It was possibly the most insincere apology I'd ever received, and I'd heard some doozies in my time. "Melissa," I said carefully, "do you understand why what you did was wrong? Yes, it was mean and unnecessary. But do you understand why it was wrong?" She looked confused. "Because it hurt your feelings?" Daniel closed his eyes. Even he could see that his wife had fundamentally missed the point. "It was wrong," I said gently, "because you treated a human being like they were less than human. It was wrong because you humiliated someone in their moment of vulnerability. It was wrong because you chose cruelty when kindness would have cost you nothing." "I said I was sorry," Melissa protested. "You said words that sounded like sorry. That's not the same thing." Daniel sat down heavily in his leather recliner, the one Melissa had tried to replace 3 times because it didn't match her decor vision. "Melissa, do you love me?" he asked. "Of course I do. Do you respect me?" She hesitated just long enough to make the answer obvious. "Yes." "Then why would you think I'd be okay with you treating my mother like garbage? What kind of man did you think you married?" The question seemed to genuinely stump her. I realized with crystal clarity that Melissa had never actually considered how her actions reflected on Daniel's character. In her mind, this was purely about her relationship with me. I thought you'd understand that I needed to establish boundaries," she said weakly. "Boundaries?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "Melissa, the woman raised me alone after my father died. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college. She took care of me when I had pneumonia last year, while you were at your spa weekend. What boundaries exactly did you think you needed? She's too involved in our marriage." "How? How is she too involved?" Melissa looked around the room as if searching for evidence. She calls too much. Once a week. She gives unwanted advice." "Like what?" She... Melissa's voice trailed off as she apparently realized she had no specific examples. "She what, Melissa? She loves me, she wants to be part of our family, she brings us food and remembers our anniversaries and asks about our lives?" With each word, Melissa seemed to shrink. The confident woman who'd blocked the door earlier had been replaced by someone who was finally hearing how her behavior sounded when spoken aloud. "I just wanted us to have our own life," she whispered. "We do have our own life," Daniel said. "But that doesn't mean we have to shut out everyone who loves us. That's not how healthy families work." I watched this conversation unfold with a mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness because my son's marriage was clearly over, but hope because he was finally seeing the situation clearly. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and felt my heart skip. It was from Tom Patterson, Melissa's boss. "Melissa, I think we need to talk. My wife found the hotel receipts." I looked up to find both Daniel and Melissa staring at me. "Everything all right, Mom?" Daniel asked. I held up my phone. "I think," I said slowly, "things are about to get much more complicated." Because while we'd been having this family drama, the real world had been spinning along without us. And apparently, Melissa's affair was about to become everyone's problem, not just ours. "Who was that?" Daniel demanded. Before I could answer, Melissa's phone started ringing. She looked at the caller ID and went pale. "It's Tom," she whispered. Daniel's expression hardened. "Answer it." "Daniel, I don't think—" "Answer it," he repeated, his voice like steel. "Right now. On speaker." Melissa's hands shook as she accepted the call and activated the speaker function. "Melissa?" Tom's voice filled the room, tight with panic. "We have a problem." Tom Patterson's voice crackled through the phone speaker like a confession being broadcast to the world. "Melissa, Linda found everything. The hotel receipts, the texts, even the jewelry receipts from that weekend in Chicago." Daniel's face went through several emotions at once: hurt, rage, and something that looked like relief. The relief, I realized, was finally having confirmation that his instincts about his wife had been correct. "Tom, I can't talk right now," Melissa said quickly, glancing at Daniel with panic in her eyes. "Yes, you can," Daniel said firmly. "In fact, I insist. Keep talking, Tom." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Who's that?" Tom asked. "That would be my husband," Melissa said weakly. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the Christmas music still playing softly from the dining room stereo. White Christmas. How appropriate for the death of a marriage. "Oh, God," Tom finally whispered. "Melissa, what have you done? What has she done?" Daniel leaned forward. "Tom, this is Daniel Stevens. I believe you know my wife quite well." "Daniel, this isn't— we never meant for what? For me to find out? For your wife to find out? Or for it to happen at all?" I had to give Tom credit. When cornered, he chose honesty. "For any of it. Daniel, I'm sorry. This got way out of hand." "How long?" Daniel's voice was deadly calm. 6 months, Tom admitted. Maybe 7. Melissa shot to her feet. "Tom, stop talking. Just stop." "Actually, Tom, please keep talking," I interjected pleasantly. "I'm particularly interested in how this affects your position at the pharmaceutical company. Doesn't your company have policies about managers having affairs with married employees?" The silence was deafening. Who is that?" Tom asked. "That's my mother," Daniel said with what sounded like pride. "And she's absolutely right. Your company does have those policies, doesn't it?" "Daniel, please," Melissa begged. "Don't destroy his career over this." "I'm not destroying anything," Daniel replied. "You both did that when you decided to risk your jobs for hotel room encounters." Tom's voice came through the speaker. Smaller now. "Melissa, I think we need to prepare for the possibility that this is going to become public." "Public how?" Melissa asked. "Linda's already called my boss. She's threatening to file a complaint with HR about the inappropriate relationship, and she's talking to a divorce attorney." Daniel stood up and began pacing. "So let me get this straight. Not only did you have an affair, but you did it with your boss, creating a massive conflict of interest that could cost you both your jobs." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Melissa protested. "What was it supposed to be like?" I asked curiously. "Did you have a plan for how the affair was supposed to go?" She whirled on me. "Stop acting like you're innocent in all this. You've been documenting our private lives like some kind of stalker." "Actually," I said mildly, "I've been documenting your very public activities. There's a difference between private and secret, dear." Daniel stopped pacing. "How long have you known about this?" "Mom? About 3 months for certain. I suspected longer. Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at my son, this man I'd raised from a boy who collected baseball cards to a successful adult who managed pharmaceutical sales across 3 states. "Because you wouldn't have believed me, and because I knew that eventually the truth would come out on its own. It always does." 3 months, Daniel repeated slowly. He turned to Melissa. "You've been lying to my face for 3 months while I defended you to my mother." "I never asked you to defend me," Melissa snapped, then immediately looked like she regretted saying it. "No, you just let me do it. You let me tell my mother she was being paranoid when she suggested you were working late too often. You let me make excuses for why you couldn't come to Sunday dinners anymore. You let me choose between you and her, knowing you were lying." Tom's voice interrupted. "Melissa, I have to go. Linda's lawyer is calling me. We'll talk later." The line went dead. Melissa sank onto the couch, her perfectly styled Christmas outfit looking suddenly rumpled. "Daniel, please, let me explain everything." "Everything?" Daniel sat across from her. "Okay, explain everything. Start with why you thought it was appropriate to humiliate my mother on Christmas Day while you're having an affair with your boss." Those are two separate issues. Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, they both seem to be about you thinking you can treat people however you want without consequences. I watched this exchange with fascination. My son had found his backbone, and it was magnificent to behold. The thing with your mother, Melissa began carefully, that was about setting boundaries. She's been interfering in our marriage since day one. Interfering how? She questions my decisions. She makes suggestions about how we should live our lives. She acts like this is still her house. Daniel looked around the living room. This was her house. I bought it from her when she moved to the condo, remember? She gave us a deal that saved us $60,000. That's exactly what I mean, Melissa said triumphantly. She held that over our heads constantly. She never mentioned it. She didn't have to. It was always there, unspoken. Remember how much money I saved you. Remember how generous I was. I blinked. In all my years, I'd never heard such creative rewriting of history. Melissa, I said gently, when have I ever brought up the money? You didn't have to. It was implied in everything you said. Daniel shook his head. That's not how my mother operates. She's direct. If she has something to say, she says it. Like today, I added. When I had photos of your wife's affair, I showed them to you directly. No hints, no implications. Just facts. Melissa's face flushed. Because you're vindictive and jealous. Vindictive? I considered this. Possibly. Jealous? Of what exactly? Of our marriage, of Daniel's happiness, of the fact that he chose me over you. The room went very quiet. Even the Christmas music seemed to pause. Melissa, Daniel said slowly, I never chose you over my mother. I chose to build a life with you that included my mother. There's a difference. But she always comes first with you. That's not true. It is true. When she calls, you drop everything. When she needs something, you're there immediately. When she has an opinion about our lives, you listen. Daniel stared at his wife for a long moment. Melissa, she's my mother. Of course I listen to her. Of course I'm there when she needs me. That's what family means. What about what I need? What do you need? The question seemed to catch her off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. I need to feel like I'm the most important person in your life, she said finally. You are the most important person in my life, Daniel said. But that doesn't mean my mother stops mattering. But she interferes. How? She... Melissa's voice trailed off, as she apparently realized she still had no specific examples. She loves us, Daniel said simply. She wants to be part of our lives. She brings us food and remembers our birthdays and asks about our day. That's not interference, Melissa. That's family. But I needed space to build our relationship without her constant presence. So you decided to have an affair instead? The question hung in the air like an accusation, because that's exactly what it was. That's not. Those things aren't connected, Melissa protested weakly. Aren't they? I asked. Because it seems to me that someone who's committed to building a strong marriage doesn't usually seek emotional and physical intimacy outside that marriage. Melissa looked at me with something approaching hatred. You don't understand anything about my marriage. I understand that healthy marriages don't require you to humiliate your partner's family members. I understand that faithful wives don't spend Tuesday afternoons in hotel rooms with their bosses, Daniel added. And I understand, I continued pleasantly, that people who are truly sorry for their behavior don't spend their apologies blaming everyone else for their choices. Melissa's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went white. What is it? Daniel asked. It's from Linda Patterson, Tom's wife. What does it say? Melissa's voice was barely a whisper as she read, I know about you and my husband. I'm filing for divorce and sending all the evidence to your HR department. Have a Merry Christmas. Daniel closed his eyes. So this is really happening. Daniel, please, Melissa begged. Help me figure out how to fix this. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at me. Then he looked around the living room with its perfect Christmas decorations and expensive furniture and carefully curated life. Melissa, he said quietly, I don't think this can be fixed. And that's when she finally started to cry. Melissa's tears were the kind that come with the realization that everything you've built is falling apart faster than you can grab the pieces. They weren't delicate, feminine tears designed to evoke sympathy. These were raw, desperate sobs that shook her entire body. "Daniel, please," she gasped between breaths. "I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll cut off all contact with Tom. I'll apologize to your mother properly. Just please don't give up on us." I watched my son's face as he processed his wife's breakdown. There was pain there, but not the devastation I might have expected. Instead, there was something that looked almost like relief. "Melissa," he said gently, "this isn't just about the affair." "Yes, it is. Everything else is fixable. The thing with your mother was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I couldn't help myself. "Melissa, you made me eat on the porch like a dog. What exactly did I misunderstand about that?" She turned to face me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I was trying to make a point." "What point?" That you can't just show up whenever you want and expect to be included in everything." Daniel's voice was incredulous. "She was invited, Melissa. I invited her. You invite her to everything, because she's my mother. But it's my house, too." "It's our house," Daniel corrected. "Ours, not yours exclusively." Melissa wiped her nose with the back of her hand, smearing her foundation. The perfectly put-together woman from earlier had disappeared entirely. "I just wanted one Christmas where it was just us and the people I chose," she said plaintively. "The people you chose?" I asked. "You mean your boss and his wife? The man you've been having an affair with?" "They weren't supposed to be there," she admitted. "Tom was supposed to stay home with Linda, but she insisted on coming at the last minute because she suspected something." Daniel sat forward. "Wait, you invited your affair partner to Christmas dinner?" "Not like that. He's your colleague." It made sense from a business perspective. "Melissa, you invited the man you're sleeping with to Christmas dinner with my mother?" The full scope of her poor judgment was finally becoming clear. She hadn't just been having an affair. She'd been flaunting it in front of our family while simultaneously humiliating the one person who might have helped her if she'd ever genuinely asked for forgiveness. "It wasn't supposed to be weird," she said weakly. "Not supposed to be weird." Daniel stood up and began pacing again. "Melissa, what exactly was your endgame here? Were you planning to leave me for Tom? Were you hoping I'd find out and file for divorce so you wouldn't have to be the bad guy? Were you just planning to keep lying indefinitely?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "For 6 months you weren't thinking clearly?" "It just kept getting more complicated." I leaned forward in my chair. "Melissa, can I ask you something?" She nodded miserably. "Do you actually love my son?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Of course I do." "Do you love him enough to put his needs before your own sometimes?" "Yes." "Do you love him enough to treat his family with respect, even when you don't particularly like them?" She hesitated. Yes." "Do you love him enough to be faithful to your marriage vows?" The hesitation was longer this time. "Yes." "Then why?" I asked gently. "Have you spent the last 6 months doing the exact opposite of all those things?" She stared at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't know." "I think you do know," Daniel said quietly. "I think you know exactly why." "What do you mean?" "I think you married me because I represented security and stability and success. I think you thought you could mold me into the husband you wanted while keeping the parts of your life that excited you separate from your marriage." Melissa's tears had stopped. She was listening intently now. "I think," Daniel continued, "you never actually wanted to be part of a family. You wanted to be the center of a universe where everyone revolved around you. That's not true, isn't it? Because when's the last time you asked about my mother's health? When's the last time you remembered my father's birthday? When's the last time you did something kind for someone in this family without being asked?" The silence stretched until it became an answer in itself. "I tried," Melissa said finally. "Did you? Or did you just do the minimum required to maintain appearances?" "I hosted holiday dinners. You hosted dinner parties where my mother was treated like an inconvenience. I bought birthday gifts, generic gift cards purchased online the day before. I participated in family events, while texting your boss and complaining about having to be there." Each response hit like a physical blow. I could see Melissa realizing that her version of being a good wife and daughter-in-law had been performative at best. "Daniel," she whispered, "what do you want me to do?" He sat back down and looked at her with something that might have been pity. "I want you to be honest, with yourself and with me." "About what?" "About whether you actually want to be married to me or whether you just want to be married to the idea of me. The question hung in the air between them. I found myself holding my breath, waiting for her answer. I want to be married to you, she said finally. Why? Because we have a good life together. That's not why you marry someone. Melissa, that's why you enter a business partnership. We have good chemistry. Had, past tense, and apparently not good enough to keep you from seeking it elsewhere. We want the same things. Do we? Because I want a marriage based on honesty and mutual respect and shared values. What do you want? Melissa opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, then opened it again. I want to feel important, she said finally. I want to feel like I matter. And how has treating my mother like garbage made you feel important? It hasn't. How has having an affair made you feel important? It made me feel desired, chosen. And how has lying to me for 6 months made you feel important? It hasn't. It's made me feel terrible. Daniel nodded slowly. So the things you did to feel important actually made you feel worse. Yes. And now you're about to lose your job, your marriage, and probably most of your friends because Tom's wife is going to make sure everyone knows what happened. Yes. So where does that leave us? Melissa looked around the room as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The expensive decorations, the perfect furniture, the carefully curated life she'd built, all of it was about to disappear. I don't know, she admitted. Daniel stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, snow had started falling, dusting the neighborhood in pristine white. A Christmas card scene that mocked the ugly reality inside our house. I think, he said slowly, you need to decide what kind of person you want to be. Not what kind of wife you want to be, or what kind of daughter-in-law you want to be. What kind of human being you want to be. Daniel, please don't leave me. He turned back to face her. Melissa, I can't save you from the consequences of your choices. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to try anymore. What does that mean? It means that the woman I married wouldn't have humiliated my mother on Christmas Day. The woman I married wouldn't have had an affair with her boss. The woman I married wouldn't have lied to my face for 6 months while I defended her to the people who love me. People change. Yes, they do. And you changed into someone I don't recognize. Melissa's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. Answer it, Daniel said. I don't want to. Answer it anyway. With shaking hands, she accepted the call and put it on speaker. Melissa Stevens? The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Jennifer Walsh from Human Resources at Patterson Pharmaceuticals. I need you to come in tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss some concerning allegations that have been brought to our attention. The blood drained from Melissa's face. Tomorrow is December 26th. Yes, it is. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. The line went dead. Daniel looked at his wife with something that might have been compassion. Well, he said quietly, I guess this is really happening. And that's when the front door opened and Tom Patterson walked in without knocking, his face grim with purpose. We need to talk, he announced. All of us. Tom Patterson stood in our foyer like a man walking to his execution. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, the smell of alcohol clinging to him like expensive cologne gone wrong. Behind him, snow continued to fall, creating a winter wonderland that mocked the disaster unfolding in our living room. Tom, what are you doing here? Melissa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Linda threw me out, he said simply. She also sent copies of all the evidence to my boss, your boss, and apparently half the company directory. He looked around the room, taking in the Christmas decorations and the 3 faces staring at him. Figured we might as well all go down together. Daniel stepped forward. Tom, I think you should leave. Actually, Daniel, I think I should stay, because what I have to say affects all of you. We don't want to hear it, I said pleasantly. This family has had quite enough drama for one Christmas. Tom looked at me with something that might have been respect. Mrs. Hamilton, right? Dorothy? That's correct. You're the one who took the photos. I am. Smart lady. Thorough documentation. He turned to Daniel. Your mother saved you about 2 years of wondering why your marriage felt wrong. Tom. Get out, Melissa said desperately. Just leave, please. Can't do that, sweetheart. See, Linda's lawyer called me an hour ago. Apparently, there's more to this story than just our little affair. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What do you mean? Daniel asked. Tom sat down on the couch without being invited, like a man who'd given up on social niceties. Melissa, you want to tell them? Or should I? Tell us what? I asked. Melissa's face had gone completely white. Tom, please don't. Don't what? Daniel's voice was sharp with alarm. Tom pulled out his phone and scrolled through it with the deliberate movements of someone who'd been drinking. Linda's been doing her own investigation. Turns out Melissa here has been quite busy. What kind of investigation? I asked. Financial. See, Linda used to be a forensic accountant before she married me. Old habits die hard. He looked up from his phone. Daniel, when's the last time you checked your joint credit card statements? What does that have to do with anything? Humor me. Daniel looked confused, but pulled out his phone. I watched his face as he accessed their banking app. The confusion transformed into something much more serious. Melissa, there are charges here I don't recognize. What kind of charges? I asked. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry purchases. His voice got tighter with each item. Melissa, there's over $8,000 in charges from places I've never been. Tom nodded grimly. That's just the beginning. Linda found evidence of a second credit card. One opened in your name, Daniel, but sent to a P.O. box that Melissa has been using. The silence in the room was deafening. Melissa, Daniel said slowly, is this true? She couldn't look at him. It's not what you think. What is it then? I needed a way to pay for things without you asking questions. Things like hotel rooms with Tom? And gifts for Tom, she admitted in a whisper. And dinners when we traveled together for conferences. Daniel set his phone down with careful precision. You opened a credit card in my name to fund your affair? It was only supposed to be temporary. Melissa, that's fraud. It's not fraud if we're married. Spouses can— No, I interrupted. Spouses cannot open credit accounts in each other's names without permission. That's identity theft. Tom was nodding. Linda's lawyer confirmed it. Says it's actually a federal crime if the amounts are large enough. How large? Daniel asked. Tom consulted his phone again. According to Linda's research, about $37,000 over the past 8 months. The number hung in the air like a physical presence. $37,000. Not just an affair, but financial fraud on a massive scale. Daniel, Melissa said desperately, I can explain everything. Explain what? How you stole nearly $40,000 from me to fund your affair? It wasn't stealing. I was planning to pay it back. With what money? I was going to get a promotion. Tom promised. I never promised anything, Tom said sharply. I specifically told you not to count on any promotion because of our relationship. Melissa whirled on him. You said if I was patient, things would work out. I was talking about us potentially being together someday, not about your career advancement. Daniel stood up abruptly. This is unbelievable. You two were planning a future together? Not planning exactly, Tom said. More like hoping. Hoping for what? For our respective divorces to happen naturally, so we could be together without all this messiness. I blinked. You were both planning to get divorced? Not planning, Melissa said quickly. Just, if it happened naturally. If it happened naturally? Daniel's voice was getting louder. Melissa, marriages don't end naturally. They end because people make choices. We thought maybe you'd realize we weren't compatible. So you decided to help that realization along by treating my mother like garbage and spending my money on your affair? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Tom stood up, swaying slightly. It was like two people who were too cowardly to end their marriages honestly, so they sabotaged them instead. The brutal honesty of his statement seemed to shock everyone into silence. That's what we did, he continued. We created situations that would force our spouses to leave us so we wouldn't have to be the bad guys. Speak for yourself, Melissa snapped. I am speaking for myself and for you, because that's exactly what you did when you humiliated Daniel's mother today. You were hoping he'd be so disgusted with your behavior that he'd ask for a divorce. Daniel looked at his wife with new understanding. Is that true? No, maybe, I don't know. Melissa was crying again. I just wanted everything to be different. Different how? I wanted to feel like I mattered, like I was chosen, like I was the most important person in someone's life. You were the most important person in my life. Daniel said quietly. But not the only person. Of course not. That's not how life works. Melissa, people have families and friends and communities. Adults don't expect to be the center of someone's universe. I did, she whispered. I wanted to be your everything. I looked at this woman who'd made my life miserable for 3 years, and for the first time, I felt something approaching pity. Not forgiveness, but pity for someone who'd destroyed her own life, chasing an impossible fantasy. Melissa, I said gently, being someone's everything is a terrible burden to place on another person. And it's not love, it's possession. She looked at me with surprise as if she'd forgotten I was there. Real love, I continued, wants the other person to have a full, rich life with many relationships. Real love doesn't require you to diminish other people to feel important. But I wanted to feel special. You were special. You were Daniel's wife. You were part of this family. You threw that away because it wasn't enough for you. Tom was nodding. She's right. I threw away 22 years of marriage because I wanted to feel like I was 25 again. And now? Daniel asked. Now Linda's filing for divorce, I'm probably going to lose my job, and I'm sitting in my car in a grocery store parking lot on Christmas night because I have nowhere else to go. He looked at Melissa. Was it worth it? She didn't answer. Daniel walked to the Christmas tree and stared at the lights for a long moment. When he turned back, his face was resolved. Melissa, I think you should pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Daniel, please. I need time to think. And you need to figure out how you're going to handle the credit card fraud and the HR investigation. Where am I supposed to go? That's something you'll need to figure out. Tom stood up. You can't stay with me. Linda changed the locks. For the first time, Melissa seemed to realize that her safety net had completely disappeared. No husband, no lover, probably no job by tomorrow evening. What about Christmas? She asked plaintively. What about it? Daniel replied. We're supposed to open presents in the morning. We're supposed to have breakfast together. We're supposed to be a family, Daniel finished. But families don't treat each other the way you've treated us. Melissa looked around the room one more time, taking in the decorations she'd spent weeks perfecting, the life she'd built and then systematically destroyed. I'll get my things, she said finally. As she headed upstairs, Tom moved toward the door. Daniel, he said, pausing with his hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Your mother was right. You deserved better than what we gave you. After they both left, the house felt eerily quiet. Daniel and I sat in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of Christmas dinner and the debris of a marriage. Are you okay? I asked. I think so. Are you? I considered the question seriously. 8 hours ago, I'd been humiliated on this very porch, treated like something less than human by a woman who'd made my son's life smaller and meaner for 3 years. Now that woman was gone, and my son was free. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm proud of you. For what? For choosing truth over comfort. For defending what's right even when it was hard. Daniel managed a small smile. I learned that from watching you. When? Today. When you could have walked away from that porch and never spoken to either of us again. But instead, you fought back. You documented the truth and you made sure I saw it. I thought about that. I didn't fight back for revenge, you know. Why then? Because you're my son, and you deserve to know who you were really married to. And because no one should have to eat on the porch like a dog? And because no one should have to eat on the porch like a dog. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the snow fall outside the window. Mom? Daniel said eventually. Yes? Next Christmas, would you like to host dinner at your place? I smiled. I'd love that, but only if you promise to help with the dishes. Deal. And Daniel? Yeah? Next time you want to bring someone to Christmas dinner, make sure it's someone who understands that love multiplies, it doesn't divide. I will. As I drove home through the falling snow, I realized something profound had happened today. I hadn't just gained my son back. I'd remembered who I was. Not just a mother or a mother-in-law, but a woman with dignity and strength and the right to be treated with respect. Sometimes the best Christmas gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, when someone tries to make you eat like a dog, the best response is to remind them that even dogs have more loyalty than they do. If you're watching this, I hope you remember that you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, no matter what anyone else tells you. And if someone tries to tell you otherwise, well, sometimes you just have to show them your teeth. Now, what would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? Let me know in the comments below. Merry Christmas, everyone, and remember, the best revenge is living well. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.